Greetings, anatomy guys. Hope you guys are well. It is cold in my shop this Monday morning, so I'm wearing flannel. It seems like it should be summer, but I'm wearing flannel. But it's not summer. Now, if you're like me at all, you are tired of online instruction. I understand that. Senioritis is hit. It doesn't just hit seniors. It doesn't just hit juniors. It's not just an online thing. This happens while we're in class too. Every year they teach, we have this impending thing that, you know, we want to go out for summertime. Hits teachers too, and we're the real seniors. I mean, look at the gray on me. I'm the senior. All right. But champions thrive in harsh conditions. And so it's getting a little harsh. We're ready to get out, but we're going to be champions. Excuse me. We need to finish strong. So today's quick lesson is going to be on some heart basics. We're going to be looking at an actual heart. We're going to look at some myths with the heart. And we're going to make sure that you get some information that's going to help you out on the test, which is, what day is it? That's right, May 8th. Thank you. I heard you say it. May 8th, we have a test on this. So let's go ahead and figure out what's going on. We're first going to look at layers of the heart. In other words, if I took a needle and I pushed the needle down through the heart, the tip of the needle would pass through different layers before it got to the inside of the chambers, all right, like the lumen space on the inside of the chambers. And there's going to be 5 different layers that will go through from the outside to the inside. Now, most of you, if you see a heart, you see something like this. It's painted, it's colored, it looks all artsy. This is really not what you see in real life. In real life, you see something more like this. All right, so this happens to be a human heart, which is kind of crazy. I know, you might ask me, Mr. V, how did you get a human heart? And I have to tell you, I didn't really. This isn't really a human heart. I'd like to make a joke about, you know, a student that bothered me a long time ago and say this is his heart, but you guys all know my jokes. This is actually a deer heart. Now, a deer heart pulled out of the body looks like this. Does it look good? No, it doesn't look good. This heart's actually been in my refrigerator for about 3 days thawing out. I have a very patient wife because she put up with it. She almost cooked it a few times thinking it was ground beef, but it's not. This is what a deer heart looks like when you pull it out of the deer body. Now, we would normally be dissecting these hearts in class because I've got freezers with organs in them, several of them. Some of you would actually get deer heart, some of you get pig heart, and that's one of the bad things about online instruction. Excuse me. Is we can't utilize this heart the way I'd like to. All right, but this is a deer heart. We're going to use this real heart to kind of determine the layers from the outside to the inside because it'll be more accurate with this. But I got this heart essentially because I harvested a deer, and normally when hunters harvest a deer, they do what we call field dressing the deer. That means to make it lighter and easier to handle before we process it for meat. We take out the inside organs of the deer. You take a knife and you basically cut all the way up to the top of its chest. And you take out the heart and the lungs and the liver and the spleen and the intestines, the stomach and all that, and you field dress it. You leave it in the field. Normally, the next day, it's gone because the coyotes come at night and they take all those things and they eat them up and they take off. Normally, it's cleaned up by the next day. So I don't do that because I'm an anatomy teacher and a deer hunter. If I get a deer or one of my buddies gets a deer, I ask for the heart. So we go and we take the heart out and we use it in anatomy class. I'm still coughing. I hate it. So I apologize for that. So let's go ahead and figure out some of the layers of the heart. Because the first thing that you're going to do when you get one of these hearts out, there's a blood clot by the way, you're going to see this weird sac that's on the outside. You don't see a nice painted surface with all these colors on it. You see this sac, and there's actually 3 different membranes that surround a heart before you actually get to what we would consider to be heart tissue. According to your book, those 3 membranes, which we're going to take off here in a second, those 3 membranes, we're going to write them down, are called the fibrous pericardium, the parietal pericardium, and the visceral pericardium, which is also known as the epicardium. Now, I'm trying to rip off the fibrous pericardium, and I'm trying to do it without straining, but it's hard. That is the fibrous pericardium. Really tough membrane wrapped around the outside of the heart, hence the name fibrous. Now, if you get the membranes off, which I kind of have them sort of off, you're going to have something that looks like this. Now, we would consider this to be more of the heart. Now, if we kept that needle going past the membranes into this part, which is the heart muscle, we're going to have something else. I might as well start writing it down, but here's a quick heart. Some of you would be dissecting this heart if we had it, but we don't. So, let's go ahead and get going. This is kind of a gross video. I know I've got to kind of clean off my hands over here. But let's check out the layers of the heart on CA-2. Remember, we're going from outside to inside. Needle from the outside to inside. The very first layer is going to be that fibrous pericardium. That's the one I just tried to rip off. It's tough and it's very strong, so I couldn't even rip it without straining. Alright, right below that, you might remember this from chapter 1. The other membrane there is called the parietal. Guess what the second word is? Pericardium. This word parite means wall, peri means around, cardi means heart. This is the one that goes around the wall of the heart. Back in chapter 1, we had the torso up there, and we put aluminum foil, if you have a really good memory, down in there to represent the parietal membranes. And then we wrap saran wrap around the organs to represent the visceral membranes. The third membrane it's called the visceral pericardium. Outside to inside, we're going down like this. We haven't even hit what we would actually think of as the heart yet, but I do need you to know that the other name for the visceral pericardium is called the epicardium because it's upon the heart. Now this one's vacuum sealed on the heart. It's like pulled in. You can't even see it unless you get a dissection needle and stick it barely under the surface and lift it up, and it'll pop up like a circus tent. It's pretty awesome, that visceral pericardium, like vacuum sealed on the heart. You can see this one and this one pretty well, but you can't really see this one unless you work it a little bit. Now finally, you're going to get to this part called the myocardium. And if you're an awesome anatomy student, you recognize this word myo from several other things that we did, like ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. The word myo means muscle. We also studied it in sleep research when we did that. This is that very thick heart muscle that you see in the heart. Now, on the inside chambers of the heart is lining. The lining of the inside chambers, it's kind of like if you jumped in a big trash can that had a lining in it, and you like reached around and you touched the inside lining of the heart. That's kind of what I'm trying to get you to think of. You have this thing called the endocardium. Now the endocardium is very slick. It's very slippery because in the heart you don't want, excuse me, you don't want much friction. You want it to be like an ice skating rink so the blood easily moves through the chambers. These are lining the four chambers of the heart, lining the insides of the four chambers, very slick, but it is prone to infection. And if the endocardium has an infection, it's called endocarditis. You put itis to indicate an inflammation or swelling of something. Now, if you push the tip of the needle down from the outside to the inside through these layers, you would essentially go through these 5 layers before you found what I'm just going to call the open space inside the chambers. Like maybe one of the 2 ventricles, one of the 2 atria. There's open spaces, the lumen spaces that are on the inside. Here's your layers of the heart. I just gave you some of the test questions, so hopefully you see it and you got it. But now, let's go to 2 myths. We're going to look at myths really quickly. All right. Myth number 1. I'm going to let that dry up a little bit. All right, myth number one. Please don't believe this. There's going to be a test question that dictates on this, but you've heard about somewhere in blood, in the body, that there's blue blood in the human body. That's a complete myth. That's just not true. Some of you might be led to believe that because you look on the inside of your arms, if you have light pale skin, pasty white skin like me, and you see blue vessels, and it leads you to think, well, wow, there's blue blood flowing through that. And you might even believe that oxygenated blood that has lots of oxygen, is red, but deoxygenated blood is blue. Now, you may also believe that because normally when artists draw these vessels and they color these vessels, they choose bluish or purplish for the veins, and they choose red for the arteries. That happens to be the aorta, and here's the superior vena cava bringing blood back into the heart, and they choose those colors too. So you might think, well, blood must be blue if it's deoxygenated. Guys, that's just not true at all. That's just not true. So I have to ask you, wow, that's kind of weird. I got blood on my hand. I have to ask you a weird question that may be a little bit gross, but if I dissected out that vein right there that looks blue to my naked eye, if I dissected it out without hurting myself and pulled it out, would it be blue? Would it still look blue? The answer is no. The answer is no, because of the same reason that the sky is blue, that deep ocean water is blue, that certain birds look blue, but really technically they're not. Like this little bird called the indigo bunting and the blue jay, it's just that their shape, the feathers, are designed in such a way to refract or bounce back a certain wavelength of light. That happens to be the blue spectrum of light. It turns out if you hit an indigo bunting or a blue jay with a light that doesn't have the blue spectrum, they turn black like that. To our sight, they turn black. Sky absorbs all of the colors of light except for one color, blue, which it reflects back. The same is true of deep ocean water. So that depth of tissue, excuse me, on that kind of tissue, it reflects back the blue wavelength of light, so it looks blue to us. If I pulled it out of my body, it would not be blue, and the blood in it, additionally, would not be blue. Now, one way that you know that there's no blue blood, because if you think that as soon as blood hits air, it turns red, and if it doesn't have air on it, it's still blue. Well, if you've ever had blood drawn, so you've gone right here, the brachial vein, they'll put something in there, a needle, to pull out the blood. That brachial vein is traveling this way. So you know it's a vein because they clamp it up here and it inflates down here. So you know it's trying to go this way, but they block it and it makes that vein go big so they can get a needle in there. Now those little tubes are vacuum tubes. All right, you might have noticed your blood kind of shoots in there. If you ever have a blood test done, they're vacuum tubes. There's no oxygen in there. So it's deox stuff. That's the vein, should be deox, although there's still oxygen, and that tube is deox, and as soon as that blood comes out there, what color is that blood? Is it blue? No. We could call it like a deeper red than oxygenated blood. It could be a deep red, nowhere close to blue. Turns out the only blue organism that has blue blood that I know of is a horseshoe crab. A horseshoe crab, they've got all kinds of experiments going on with them, and they have actually what looks like blue blood. So, how did that phrase come out? Well, I hate to say this, but it's kind of an exclusionary phrase from our history. And we don't have a good, I don't know of any country that has a really good history in terms of how we included everybody. However, back in the day, they used to say blue-blooded Americans. And what this really meant was light-skinned Americans. Because if you had pasty white skin, you could see what looked like blue inside, but you couldn't see it if you had darker skin. And so they'd say, we need some blue-blooded Americans, which is exclusive and it's not right, but that's where that came from. So that's myth number one. I don't know if this is dry yet, but let's go ahead and go now to myth number two. Better write that last one down though. There's red and blue blood in the body. Okay, false. false statement. How do I make this false? There is not red and blue blood. There's only what I would consider two different shades of red, like a deep, deep red and a lighter red, but there's no actual blue blood in the human body. Myth number 2. Myth number 2 is that the heart pumps blood to the entire body, throughout the body. Okay, that additionally is a myth. You've heard people say the heart pumps blood throughout your body all the time and is pumping all the way out. The fact of the matter is the heart pumps blood to about 51% of the body. If you remember the capillaries kind of look like this. And you got these unions. So the blood goes to the capillaries. Remember, the heart pumps blood to arteries. The arteries split in arterioles. They break into the capillaries. The capillaries go to the venules. They go to the veins. The veins go back to the heart. If you look at the capillaries, you remember, hopefully from a kwashiorkor video out, that the pressure remains, if this is the arterial side, the pressure remains to the arterial side and then a tiny bit more. And we call it hydrostatic pressure. By the time that pressure is gone, there's no more pressure in the veins. You're not going to feel a pulse in the veins because the pressure drops super, super low. So the heart is not able to push blood. I should say it's not designed to push blood all the way through the body. What it does is it delivers that blood to the capillaries, to the tissues that it's trying to feed, and then there's other ways that the blood gets back up to the heart. And we're going to look at those other ways in a separate video on blood flow. It's called venous blood flow in your chapter. And we're going to check all that out. It's really interesting. I like that stuff. But this is myth number 2. All right, myth number 1, there's no red and blue blood. Myth number 2, heart pumps blood throughout the body. No, I want you to remember this number. The heart pumps blood to something like 51, a little over half of your body. Pumps it out to your fingertips, pumps it down to your toes, but then other things bring that tissue back up, bringing that blood back up to your heart and deliver it to other things. So we're going to look at that in a future video. Guys, let's keep plugging, keep doing well. A lot of you doing excellent, which I love. Some of you need to pick it up. So let's finish strong. Let's get this thing done with, and let's finish strong with the heart stuff. Test May 8th. There's going to be a 3-hour window opened up. This is Mr. V from his cold wood shop. Checking out. Have a good day.